Hey you guys, what's going on? It's Ariel here. Before the video, I just want to let you guys know this is a first impressions video and not a full review. So I've only played a little bit of the game so far. You guys are not going to be getting my full reaction, my full review of this game until about a month and a half from now. This is a very big game. There's a lot to it. So I want to make sure that the review is as thorough as possible. So enjoy my first impressions and I'll see you all in the video. What's going on, you guys? It's your Huggable Hipster here, and welcome to my brief first impressions of Zelda Breath of the Wild. So, just like Pokemon Scarlet, I haven't played a Zelda game since Zelda and the Wind Waker, which is, what, how many years ago now? Released in 2003, so when I was 11. I am not the biggest fan of Zelda. That is the only Zelda game I have ever played was Wind Waker, and I absolutely love it. Please, Nintendo, I beg of you, put the Wind Waker out on the Switch. Everyone, including myself, would absolutely just love it. So with that being said, since Zelda and the Wind Waker was my most previous experience when I was a kid with this topic and with this franchise, it's going to be a little bit of a whiplash going into Breath of the Wild, considering I haven't played these games in years. Going into the Breath of the Wild was kind of like taking a time capsule back in time of where I remember the experience of playing Zelda and the Wind Waker. So I kind of, in my brain, applied it to this and thought, okay, since I loved Wind Waker, I know I'm bound to love this. I played almost 2 hours of Breath of the Wild, and I can say that I was thoroughly bored with every bit of it. There are moments in different games of where it'll take me by surprise and it'll make me think, oh, I absolutely love this, or it'll make me think, okay, here's the same formulaic thing over and over and over again, which is unfortunately what happened with Breath of the Wild. My full review isn't going to come out for another month or so because of just how ginormous this game actually is. It's huge, okay? It looks breathtaking, it looks absolutely beautiful, and the terrain in which you can cover is just endless. When it comes to an open world game, yes, Nintendo did this the right way. Nintendo actually pulled off a Zelda game open world style, and I think that is so incredible. But when it comes to content that you can actually see in the game that is worth playing and the replayability factor, you can see early on if it's going to be replayable at all. And this game for me will probably not be as replayable because let's just face it, okay, the weapons breaking so easily, I don't ever remember that being a thing in Zelda. So someone correct me in the comments if I'm mistaken, but I used one of the axes that you get right at the beginning of the game, and it broke within a few uses of me, fighting a monster and everything. I don't think that's traditionally how it's supposed to go. I don't think they were meant to break that easily, but I could be wrong. I could be missing something that I can fix them easily, or like if there's an auto fix or whatever there is. It just baffles me that weapons in this game break so easy. There are some parts of the game that I thought were absolutely wonderful, of where the characters in Zelda still hold that same charm. They still hold that same magic that I felt when I was a kid playing Wind Waker on the GameCube. And it was still really amazing how Nintendo managed to encapsulate that magic after so many years of Zelda being around or being a part of people's lives. And I think that's absolutely wonderful. And it's something very difficult to do, is to encapsulate the magic of characters and keep them that same way locked in time for years. However, there's also a downside to this, because when you keep characters the same way for years, they become trite and somewhat repetitive and a little bit boring, because whenever you have characters that remain the same and they show no difference from year to year, there is a good side to it, like I said, but this is the bad side of it, of where we see a monotonous side, a boring side to them, of where you're just like, okay, where's the character development? Like in this game, whenever I hear them talking to one another, whenever I hear different cutscenes, it's like, okay, did these characters not have any richness or any deepness to them at all? Now, also, in my opinion, this is another case of nostalgia winning over the game actually being good. Now, let's be honest with one another for a second, okay? Take a deep breath and out. And understand that what I'm saying is not a personal attack, but more an intellectual argument to try to show you guys that maybe this is more so nostalgia than anything else. And this goes the same for Pokemon, by the way, as well. Let's say that Zelda came out this year for the first time ever. Or you know what? I'll make the deal even sweeter. Let's say Breath of the Wild was the first game that ever came out from Zelda, ever, in the history of Zelda. And you have the bugs in the game. You have the broken combat of where it's kind of Souls combat mixed in with weapons breaking every so often. So you get that mixture of, oh, cool, this combat is really good, mixed in with like, oh god, these weapons are breaking very, very quickly type combat. You have the repetitive enemies just with a new skin. You have, what is it? The characters that don't really, I don't feel attached to the characters. I don't feel like I can actually, as a whole, and maybe that's just because I'm not a Zelda fan, you know? But when we look at this, and if we see this game for the first time, do we think that this game is good because of nostalgia? Or do we think this game is actually good on its own accord, on its own merit? This is the biggest issue that I have with a game series that is old. Is it because of the nostalgia, or is it because that the game is actually good on its own merit? That's where we kind of have to go here with this, because we could say the same thing for Pokemon. Is Pokemon actually good on its own merit, or is it because of the nostalgia that it's good? You see, I'm so far removed from the Zelda franchise because I'm not particularly a fan, but I only played one game of it, so in that sense I'm only a fan of that one game, Wind Waker, so I can't really say, oh yes, I'm fully fledged fan of Zelda, when I'm really in actuality not. You know, and that's the thing of where, like, I feel like since I am so distanced from it, I can give that unbiased review that not a lot of people can actually give, because most people played so many Zelda games. so a lot of people's childhood were playing Zelda games and do heavily rely on that nostalgic purpose to create a little bit more of a biased review, I would say, because that, you know, that mindset of where they're coming from is either from them playing the game so much when they were kids, or it comes from seeing their friends play it, or just being involved in their childhood somehow. Whereas for me, what was in my childhood was a lot of horror games. It was Resident Evil. It was different pixelated type horror games. It was Mario. Oh my gosh, it was, you know, Mario isn't a horror game, but you know, I thought that the plants were gonna actually eat me. And the thing is also that I found kind of strange is that while the game is beautiful and it can be really striking sometimes to look at, I mean, my goodness gracious, the way that I kind of felt like, to a degree, it was Zelda, but make it Elden Ring. You know, it was like the Zelda-fied version of Elden Ring, basically. And I thought that it looked so beautiful, so striking. So it was so like kind of just breathtaking at points. But I mean, breaking weapons, small stamina gauge, lack of armor, the lack of mobility, the list goes on. The amount of things and labor you have to do and that this game demands from the player who is not used to this sort of game, it's kind of ridiculous at a certain point, because when I look at this game and I look at what it demands from the player, it just screams tedious to me. And also, whenever I get immersed into a game, it's either because of the story or the soundtrack. Where's the soundtrack? It either is there in certain parts or it isn't entirely. Because when you just have the sound of nature going about a game, I think that for some players might think, ooh, realism. No, you need to have something more to immerse the player in. You need to have something there to guide the story along, to make it so that it's worth the player's time. I felt like, again, another thing of where nostalgia is more reliant on their sales. And one thing I've noticed though, in optimization, whenever you play Breath of the Wild on your TV screen or monitor versus when you're playing it on the Nintendo Switch screen, there is such a big difference. The way that it kind of chugs at certain points, it's strange. In the first kind of hour that I was playing the game, I noticed that in like a cutscene that I was talking to the big guy with the beard, you'll probably see it in one of the clips that I show. You know, it kind of chugged at certain points from what I noticed, and I was like, okay, this is somewhat odd. At the end of the day, I felt like this game was just overhyped because of nostalgia. That's it. And it's the same thing that I've said about Pokemon. It's the same thing that I will say about Spyro. It's the same thing that I will say about a lot of older games where the developers and the companies can't think outside the box for a new release. Because when Resident Evil 6 came out, that's where my thoughts were a little bit. I was like, okay, this is dreadful. This is not where it should be. This is just, you know, selling a game just to sell a game. It's kind of like in Call of Duty style. But then they reinvented themselves, and Resident Evil 7 made the series good again. That's whenever a company is passionate about their projects. That's when you know that they care about the fans more so than they do about making a quick buck. Guys, those are my first impressions of Breath of the Wild. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys like my face and what I do, please be sure to subscribe and hit that bell down below. I make videos every day here on YouTube. I finished recording, by the way, the rest of the episodes for Resident Evil 4 Remake. The next series that we're going to be diving into is the remake of Dead Space. I'm really excited about that. It's the first one, the original, I mean, is just so good. May you find your worth in the waking world, dear hunter. Stay casually nerdy, and I will see you all in the next video. Umbasa.